You think you know what it feels like to be invisible in your own family. Try being the eldest daughter who everyone assumes will never amount to anything while your perfect younger brother gets promoted to department head at 26. That was my reality 4 years ago, and let me tell you something. That family dinner where they celebrated his success while completely ignoring mine changed my entire trajectory. I'm Maria Santos, and I now run the most successful independent fitness coaching business in our region. But this story doesn't start with success. This story starts with me sitting at my brother David's promotion celebration, watching everyone toast his achievements while I quietly paid for half the dinner bill with money I'd earned from something they didn't even know existed. See, while David was climbing the corporate ladder at a prestigious consulting firm, I was what they called the family disappointment. Dropped out of my master's program in psychology because I couldn't handle the academic pressure. Got fired from 2 different office jobs for what they called lack of focus. Tried working at a gym that closed down 6 months later due to poor management. But here is what none of them knew. Every morning at 5 a.m. while they thought I was sleeping off another night of failure, I was actually in the local park training my first client. A middle-aged woman named Patricia who wanted to lose weight before her daughter's wedding. She paid me $20 an hour, cash, and she was getting results that her expensive personal trainer at the fancy gym couldn't deliver. You want to know the exact moment I realized I had something special? It was watching Patricia cry happy tears when she fit into a dress she hadn't worn in 15 years. This woman who had tried every diet program, every fitness class, every weight loss supplement on the market finally found something that worked. Not because I had fancy certifications or expensive equipment, but because I actually listened to what her body needed. That night, lying in my childhood bedroom at 29 years old while my family's voices echoed in my head about David's bright future, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to build something so successful that they'd have to acknowledge it wasn't just luck or a phase. I started with Patricia and 2 other clients I'd met through word of mouth. Sarah, a working mom who needed workouts she could do during her lunch break. Mike, a construction worker with chronic back pain who needed strength training that wouldn't aggravate his injury. Each person paid me $25 per session, and we met in parks, apartment building gyms, or their living rooms. My first month, I made $300. Not much by most standards, but it was money I'd earned by helping people achieve goals they thought were impossible. Patricia lost 12 pounds. Sarah gained enough energy to keep up with her toddlers. Mike's back pain decreased significantly for the first time in years. The problem was credibility. Working out of parks and people's homes made me look unprofessional to potential clients. I had no official certifications, no business license, no marketing materials. Most importantly, my family saw this as another one of my temporary interests, not a real career. David would come home from his important consulting job and find me researching nutrition plans on my laptop. He'd shake his head and make comments like, "Maria, this fitness thing is fine as a hobby, but you need to think about your future. You can't make a living being someone's workout buddy." My father was even more direct. He'd see me heading out early in the morning with gym clothes and water bottles and ask when I was going to stop playing personal trainer and get a real job with benefits and a retirement plan. Even my mother, who I thought might understand since she'd always struggled with her own weight, would make comments about how I needed to be realistic about my career prospects and maybe consider going back to school for something practical. But here is what they didn't understand. Every single client I worked with got results. Not just physical results, but confidence, energy, and a completely different relationship with their bodies. Patricia referred her sister Carmen. Sarah's neighbor Jennifer wanted to start training. Mike recommended me to 3 guys from his construction crew. I was tracking everything in a simple notebook. Client progress, session fees, expenses for equipment, and transportation. What started as 3 clients became 6, then 10, then 15. I was making more money per hour than I'd ever made at any office job, and my clients were achieving goals they'd been trying to reach for years. 8 months in, I was training 22 regular clients and earning more monthly income than David made at his consulting firm. But I was hitting limitations. I needed proper equipment, a dedicated training space, and most importantly, I needed my family to stop treating this like a hobby. So I did something that surprised even myself. I got certified. Not just one basic personal training certification, but specialized credentials in corrective exercise, nutrition coaching, and injury rehabilitation. I spent 6 months studying, taking exams, and completing practical requirements while maintaining my full client load. When I passed my final certification exam, I didn't announce it to my family immediately. I wanted to see if they'd ask about my work, show interest in what I was learning, or acknowledge that I might be building something legitimate. They didn't. At David's birthday dinner, when someone asked what I was up to these days, my mother answered for me. Maria's been doing some personal training on the side. It is good exercise for her, and she makes a little pocket money helping neighbors with their workouts. I sat there listening to her describe my business, because that is what it was. A business with 22 paying clients and monthly revenue that exceeded most people's salaries. As a hobby, that was good exercise for me. That night, I made two important decisions. First, I was going to lease proper training space and make this official. Second, I wasn't going to tell my family about it until they were forced to acknowledge what I'd built. I found a small commercial space in a strip mall between a yoga studio and a physical therapy clinic. 800 square feet, perfect for one-on-one and small group training. The lease was expensive for someone with no business credit history, but I had 8 months of consistent income records and references from satisfied clients. The space transformation took 6 weeks. Rubber flooring, mirrors, professional-grade equipment, a small office area for consultations. I hired a graphic designer to create a logo and business cards. I registered as an LLC and got business insurance. Most importantly, I created a training environment that was welcoming, non-intimidating, and focused entirely on helping people achieve their individual goals. I still didn't tell my family about the studio or the business registration. When they asked where I was spending my days, I said I was working with clients. They assumed I meant the same informal arrangement in parks and living rooms. Meanwhile, I was building something remarkable. My clients were referring their friends, family members, and coworkers. A local physical therapist started sending patients who needed post-rehabilitation fitness training. 2 different doctors referred patients who needed supervised exercise programs for health conditions. By the end of my first year with the studio, I had 43 regular clients, a waiting list for new client consultations, and enough profit to upgrade my equipment and hire a part-time administrative assistant. I was working 50 hours a week, but I'd never felt more energized or confident in my life. The second year is when everything really accelerated. Word spreads fast in the fitness industry when someone consistently delivers results. A local wellness center wanted to partner with me for their corporate clients. A women's health clinic started referring patients who needed specialized exercise programs. 3 different sports teams hired me to work with injured players during their recovery. I was making more money in a month than David made in 6 weeks at his consulting job, but I still hadn't told them. Why? Because I wanted to see how long they'd continue to dismiss something that was generating 6-figure annual revenue. Because I wanted to see if they'd ever show genuine interest in my work instead of assuming it was insignificant. The answer was both predictable and disappointing. At our cousin's wedding, when I mentioned I might need to leave early for work the next morning, David laughed and said, "Maria, it is helping people do jumping jacks. I think you can take 1 day off." When my father suggested I consider applying for administrative positions at his company, I said I was pretty committed to my current work. His response was, "Training people isn't a career, Maria. It is something you do until you figure out what you really want to do with your life." Even my mother, when her friends asked about my situation, would say Maria's been doing some fitness coaching. It keeps her busy, but we're hoping she'll find something more stable eventually. Here's what my little fitness coaching business actually looked like by the end of year 2. 68 regular clients across 3 different programs. Individual training, small group sessions, and specialized rehabilitation work. Corporate contracts with 5 local businesses for employee wellness programs. A partnership with 2 medical practices for therapeutic exercise referrals. I'd hired 3 part-time trainers to help with the increased demand. I was renting additional space for group classes. I'd incorporated as an LLC with proper business banking and accounting systems. My annual revenue was approaching $300,000. But as far as my family knew, I was still helping neighbors with jumping jacks in the park. Year 3 is when I made the decision to expand into comprehensive wellness coaching. I'd been thinking about it for months, but it required additional certifications, new equipment, and a completely different business model. I needed to offer nutrition counseling, lifestyle coaching, and long-term health planning alongside fitness training. I enrolled in an intensive nutrition certification program while maintaining my full client load. 6 months of advanced coursework in metabolic health, dietary planning, and behavioral change. The program was expensive and time-consuming, but I knew it would allow me to provide more comprehensive services to my clients. I also invested in body composition analysis equipment, meal planning software, and expanded my studio space to include a consultation room for nutrition counseling. The total investment was significant, but my business was generating enough profit to fund the expansion without taking on debt. Throughout this entire process, my family continued to offer advice about finding stable employment. David suggested I look into corporate wellness positions at large companies. My father brought home job listings for administrative roles with health insurance benefits. My mother wondered if I'd consider going back to school for a degree in something practical like nursing or physical therapy. I just smiled and said I'd consider their suggestions. The launch of my comprehensive wellness program happened on a Monday morning in September. I'd been planning it for months, creating detailed program packages, training my staff on the new services, developing partnerships with local nutritionists and mental health professionals. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Existing clients upgraded to comprehensive packages that included fitness training, nutrition coaching, and lifestyle planning. New clients specifically sought out our wellness programs after hearing about our holistic approach. Corporate clients expanded their contracts to include nutrition seminars and stress management workshops. Within the first month, we were booked solid for 12 weeks in advance. I was turning away potential clients because we simply didn't have capacity to serve everyone who wanted our services. The revenue from that single month exceeded what I used to make in an entire year at office jobs. That evening, exhausted but exhilarated, I sat in my expanded studio and looked around at what I'd built. Professional training equipment, consultation rooms, a team of qualified staff members, walls covered with client success stories and transformation photos. A business that was changing people's lives every single day. I pulled out my phone and calculated the numbers from our first month with the new program structure. $47,832 in revenue. From my little fitness hobby that wasn't real work. I didn't share those numbers with anyone. I didn't post about the success on social media. I just sat there in my studio, my business, my proof that I'd been building something significant all along. The thing about success in a small community is that it becomes visible whether you want it to or not. My clients worked at the same companies as my family's friends. They shopped at the same stores, attended the same churches, sent their children to the same schools. Eventually, someone was going to mention seeing me running a thriving business. The conversation happened on a Thursday evening. My mother called with a strange tone in her voice. "Maria, Mrs. Gonzalez from church says she saw you at some kind of wellness center downtown. She says you were leading a seminar for a group of business people. She thinks you might be running the place." I could have deflected or downplayed it. Instead, I said yes, I own Santos Wellness Studio. We've been operating for 3 years, and we just expanded our services to include comprehensive health coaching. The silence was so long I thought she'd hung up. Then, very quietly, she asked, "Why didn't you ever tell us about this?" "Because you never asked," I replied. "Every time I mentioned my work, you dismissed it as a hobby or suggested I find something more stable. If I'd told you I was opening a wellness center, you would have questioned whether I knew what I was doing and suggested I reconsider. But Maria, we would have supported you. We would have been proud. Would you?" When I started training clients 3 years ago, you told people I was making pocket money helping neighbors exercise. When I mentioned being busy with work, David said it was just helping people do jumping jacks. When I said I was committed to my current work, Dad suggested I apply for administrative jobs instead. Mom was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "We'd like to see what you've built. We'd like to understand your business." The following Saturday, my entire family visited Santos Wellness Studio. They walked through the front door like they were entering a foreign country, looking around at the professional equipment, the consultation rooms, the schedule board showing dozens of client appointments, the staff members preparing for classes and training sessions. David stood in front of our program display for several minutes, reading descriptions of services I'd developed. Dad watched clients checking in for appointments, paying for sessions, scheduling future visits. Mom observed my staff, how they interacted with clients, how they managed the complex scheduling system, how they worked as a coordinated team. I was in the back office handling administrative tasks, but I could see them through the glass partition. They looked stunned, like they were seeing me for the first time. After about an hour, they approached the front desk. My assistant Jennifer, who'd been working with me for 18 months, smiled and asked if they were interested in learning about our programs. David said they were Maria's family and were just visiting to see the business. When Jennifer started to give them the standard tour, I came out of the office. "Family tour," I told her. "I'll handle this one." We walked through the entire facility while I explained our different program areas. The individual training space where clients worked on strength building and injury rehabilitation. The group exercise room where we held small classes and corporate workshops. The consultation rooms where we conducted fitness assessments and nutrition planning sessions. They asked questions they'd never asked before. How many clients did we serve? What kind of results were people seeing? How had I learned to run such a complex operation? What were my plans for future growth? Finally, we sat in my office while they processed what they'd seen. The conversation was awkward at first because they were clearly struggling to reconcile their image of my work with the reality of my business. David spoke first. "Maria, this is incredible. This is a real business. A successful business. How did you build all this without us knowing?" "I built it the same way I told you I was building it for 3 years," I replied. "You just decided it wasn't worth paying attention to because it didn't fit your definition of legitimate work." Dad looked uncomfortable. "We made assumptions about what you were doing. We thought it was temporary, small scale. It started small scale, but it grew because I was committed to excellence and my clients got results. You never asked about growth, about my plans, about what I was learning or achieving. You just assumed I wasn't capable of building something significant." My mother reached across the desk and touched my hand. "We were wrong, Maria. We were completely wrong about what you were doing and what you were capable of building." I looked at each of them. "You weren't just wrong about my business. You were wrong about how you treated me. For 3 years, you acted like I was wasting my time while I was actually building something that changes people's lives every day." The office was quiet except for the sounds of the business operating around us. Clients arriving for appointments, trainers preparing equipment, the phone ringing with new inquiries. All of it evidence that I'd been right to trust my instincts over their judgment. David finally asked, "What can we do to make this right? How can we support you now?" I thought about his question carefully. The truth was, I'd built this business without their support, and their approval wasn't necessary for my continued success. I had clients who trusted me, staff members who depended on me, and a community that valued what I provided. But they were still my family, and despite everything, I loved them. I just needed them to understand that our relationship had to change fundamentally. "You can start by seeing me as a successful business owner," I said. "Not as the family disappointment who needs career advice. Not as someone whose work is cute or temporary. You can see me as someone who identified a market need, developed expertise, took calculated risks, and built something valuable." Dad nodded, slowly. "You've accomplished something remarkable here, and we failed to recognize it." David was looking around my office, taking in details he'd missed before. The business licenses on the wall, the client testimonials, the awards from local business organizations. "Maria, I owe you a huge apology. I completely underestimated what you were building." The conversation continued for 2 hours. They asked about my business model, about managing employees, about the challenges of working in the health and wellness industry. Real questions about real work, the kind of questions they'd never bothered to ask before. When they finally left, my father stopped at the door and turned back. "Maria, I want you to know that I'm proud of you. Not just for the business success, but for proving us wrong. For believing in yourself when we didn't believe in you." That evening, after we'd closed and finished cleaning, I stood in my studio and thought about that family dinner 3 years ago. About feeling invisible and dismissed, about being treated like the family failure, about making the decision to prove them wrong through action, rather than argument. I'd done more than prove them wrong. I'd built something that exceeded even my own initial expectations. Santos Wellness Studio wasn't just successful, it was becoming a regional leader in comprehensive health coaching. Clients drove from 5 different cities to work with us. Medical professionals referred their most challenging cases. Other fitness entrepreneurs asked for my mentorship. 6 months later, I opened a second location. A year after that, I launched an online coaching program that served clients nationally. Each expansion was profitable from day one because I'd built a reputation for delivering results that other programs couldn't match. The local business magazine featured me in their annual Success Stories issue with the headline From Family Disappointment to Regional Wellness Leader. The article detailed my journey from informal personal training to comprehensive wellness coaching, but what resonated most was how they described my approach. Not as someone who got lucky or stumbled into success, but as an entrepreneur who'd identified an underserved market and executed a strategic growth plan. My family keeps that magazine article on their coffee table now, right next to David's Employee Recognition Awards and his graduate degree certificate. Equal representation, finally. But you know what the most rewarding part of this entire journey has been? It is not the financial success or the professional recognition, or even proving my family wrong. It is the moment every single day when a client achieves something they thought was impossible. When Patricia runs her first 5K at age 53. When Sarah completes a triathlon while managing 3 kids and a demanding job. When Mike returns to work pain-free after years of chronic back problems. It is building something that genuinely improves people's lives, that gives them confidence and energy they didn't know they could have, that helps them become the healthiest version of themselves. It is creating meaningful employment for qualified professionals who share my commitment to client success. It is being part of a community in a way that makes a real difference. 3 years ago, my family saw a failure who needed career guidance. Today, they see a successful business owner who built something from nothing. But I've always been the same person, someone who cared enough about other people's health to wake up at 5 a.m. for training sessions, who paid attention to what clients actually needed instead of what the fitness industry was selling, who was willing to invest in education and take risks to build something meaningful. The difference isn't who I am. The difference is that now they're finally paying attention to what I was building all along. Here is what I learned from this experience that might help you if you're in a similar situation. Success isn't about proving other people wrong, although that satisfaction is undeniable. Success is about proving yourself right. It is about trusting your instincts when everyone around you questions them. It is about working towards something you believe in, even when the people closest to you can't see the potential. Sometimes the people who love us most are the ones who limit us longest. Not because they want to hurt us, but because they can't imagine us being different than we've always been. They see us through the lens of who we were in high school, not who we're becoming as adults. They project their own fears about security and stability onto our dreams. But here is the crucial truth. You don't need their permission to become who you're meant to be. You don't need their approval to pursue your vision. You don't need them to believe in you before you start believing in yourself completely and unconditionally. I spent 3 years building a business that now generates 7 figures annually, while my family told me to find stable employment with benefits. And you know what? Those were the most transformative 3 years of my life, because I learned that I could trust my judgment completely. I learned that my instincts about what people needed were more accurate than conventional wisdom. I learned that my dreams were not only valid but achievable. Today, Santos Wellness Studio has 4 locations across 2 states. We employ 32 people full-time. We're launching a franchise program next year. A major wellness brand wants to partner with us for a national expansion. But none of that external validation matters as much as this internal truth. I know who I am. I know what I'm capable of building. And I know that no one else's opinion of my potential is more important than my own belief in what I can achieve. So if you're sitting somewhere right now feeling like the family disappointment, like the one who is still figuring things out, like the person everyone underestimates, use that energy strategically. Let their doubt become your motivation. Let their dismissal fuel your determination to succeed. Build something so undeniably successful that they have to acknowledge it. Not for revenge, but for proof. Proof that you were right to trust yourself. Proof that their limitations don't define your possibilities. Proof that sometimes the family failure is actually the one with the clearest vision of what is achievable. You know what is interesting about family dynamics? They often reflect broader societal assumptions about what constitutes legitimate work and success. My family dismissed my fitness business the same way society often dismisses service-based businesses, especially those run by women. They valued David's corporate consulting job more than my wellness coaching, because one fits traditional definitions of professional success while the other seemed less serious. But here is what I discovered. The market doesn't care about traditional definitions. Clients don't care whether your business fits someone else's idea of legitimate work. They care about results. They care about value. They care about whether you can solve problems they haven't been able to solve elsewhere. My clients didn't choose Santos Wellness Studio because I had an MBA or worked for a prestigious company. They chose us because we helped Patricia lose 60 pounds safely after 3 failed attempts with other programs. They chose us because we helped Sarah complete a marathon while managing a chronic autoimmune condition. They chose us because we helped Mike return to construction work after doctors said his back injury would force early retirement. The market validated my business model long before my family understood what I was building. Revenue, client retention, referral rates, and business growth were all confirming that I'd identified a real need and developed effective solutions. But I had to learn to trust market feedback more than family opinions. This is something you need to understand if you're building something unconventional. The people closest to you might be the last ones to recognize your success because they're invested in seeing you the way they've always seen you. Change threatens their understanding of family roles and dynamics. When I became more successful than David, it disrupted their narrative about who was the achiever and who was the struggler in our family. When my business started generating more revenue than my father's salary, it challenged his assumptions about what kinds of work were valuable. When I became someone other people sought out for advice, it forced them to reconsider whether I was actually the person they thought I was. That is uncomfortable for families, and often they'll resist acknowledging your success longer than strangers would because strangers don't have emotional investment in keeping you in a particular role. But here is the empowering part of this dynamic. Once you understand it, you can stop taking their initial dismissal personally. It is not really about your capabilities or the legitimacy of your work. It is about their comfort with existing family dynamics and their ability to process change. My family's eventual recognition of my success wasn't just about the business metrics, although those were undeniable. It was about them finally being able to see me as someone different than who they thought I was. That process took time and required overwhelming evidence that couldn't be dismissed or minimized. The lesson here isn't that you should hide your progress from family like I did. The lesson is that you should build your confidence and validate your decisions based on market response and objective results, not family approval. Use their support if it is available, but don't let their skepticism derail your progress. Let me tell you about some of the specific challenges I faced during those 3 years that might help you navigate similar situations. The hardest part wasn't the long hours or the financial uncertainty, or even the physical demands of the work. The hardest part was maintaining confidence in my decisions when the people I loved most kept suggesting I was making mistakes. There were nights when I'd come home exhausted from training clients, excited about someone's breakthrough or progress, and my family would ask when I was going to start looking for real work. There were family gatherings where relatives would ask what I was doing with my life, and before I could answer, my parents would explain that I was doing some personal training while figuring out my career direction. Those interactions were demoralizing because they made me question whether I was being realistic about my business potential. When people you trust keep suggesting you're pursuing something temporary or insignificant, it is natural to wonder if they see something you're missing. But I learned to separate emotional responses from business analysis. Every month I looked at objective metrics, client retention rates, revenue growth, referral patterns, and market demand. Those numbers told a consistent story of a business that was solving real problems for people who were willing to pay for solutions. I also started connecting with other entrepreneurs who'd built service-based businesses. Through networking events and online communities, I met people who'd faced similar family skepticism while building successful companies. Their experiences helped me understand that what I was experiencing was normal, not a sign that my business wasn't viable. One conversation that particularly helped was with a woman who'd built a successful marketing consultancy after her family spent 2 years telling her to get a job with a stable company. She told me that families often can't see the potential in businesses that don't look like traditional employment because they're focused on risk rather than opportunity. She was right. My family saw the risks: irregular income, no health insurance provided by an employer, no guaranteed salary, no clear career advancement path. They couldn't see the opportunities: unlimited income potential, complete control over my schedule, the ability to directly impact people's lives, the satisfaction of building something from nothing. Both perspectives were valid, but only one was useful for making decisions about my future. I learned to acknowledge their concerns without letting those concerns override my analysis of what was actually working. Another challenge was managing the practical aspects of business growth while dealing with family skepticism. When I needed to make significant investments in equipment or space, I couldn't discuss those decisions with family members who might have valuable insights because they didn't understand the business well enough to offer useful advice. Instead, I had to build a network of mentors and advisors who understood what I was building. I connected with other fitness professionals who'd grown their businesses, small business owners in other industries who'd faced similar growth challenges, and even clients who had business backgrounds and were willing to share their perspectives. This network became invaluable for making strategic decisions about expansion, pricing, staffing, and market positioning. They helped me avoid common mistakes and accelerate growth in ways that wouldn't have been possible if I'd been trying to figure everything out alone. The point is that building a business while managing family skepticism requires you to create alternative sources of support and validation. You can't rely entirely on family approval or advice, especially in the early stages when what you're building might not look impressive to outside observers. You need people who understand entrepreneurship, who've built businesses themselves, who can help you separate legitimate concerns from unfounded skepticism. You need mentors who can help you make smart decisions and avoid common pitfalls. Most importantly, you need to develop confidence in your own judgment so you can make decisions based on facts rather than emotions. Let me share some specific strategies that helped me maintain momentum during the most challenging periods. First, I kept detailed records of everything: client progress, testimonials, financial performance, business milestones. When doubt crept in, I could look at concrete evidence of what was working rather than relying on feelings or other people's opinions. Second, I set specific, measurable goals for different time periods and celebrated achieving them, even if no one else understood their significance. When I reached 20 regular clients, that was a major milestone worth acknowledging. When I hit my first month of 5-figure revenue, that deserved recognition, even if my family didn't understand why it mattered. Third, I invested in my own education continuously. I took courses, attended workshops, read extensively about business development and the fitness industry. This ongoing learning gave me confidence that I was making informed decisions and staying current with best practices. Fourth, I connected with my bigger purpose regularly. On difficult days, I reminded myself why this work mattered: helping people achieve health goals they'd struggled with for years, creating employment for qualified trainers, building something that made a positive difference in my community. That sense of purpose sustained me when external validation wasn't available. Finally, I practiced patience with the process. Building a business takes time, and changing family perceptions takes even longer. I focused on consistent progress rather than expecting dramatic breakthroughs or immediate recognition. These strategies might seem obvious, but they're crucial when you're building something unconventional while managing skepticism from people whose opinions matter to you. The combination of practical business development and emotional resilience is what allows you to persist through the challenging early stages. Now, let me tell you about what happened after my family finally recognized what I'd built, because that part of the story has its own lessons. Their acknowledgement was gratifying, but it also created new challenges I hadn't anticipated. Suddenly, everyone had opinions about my business decisions. David started offering advice about expansion strategies based on his consulting experience. My father suggested I consider franchising because that is how real businesses grow. My mother wondered if I should hire a marketing firm to help promote the business more professionally. Their input came from a place of love and support, but it was based on limited understanding of my industry and business model. I had to learn how to appreciate their interest while maintaining boundaries around decision-making authority. I also had to resist the temptation to make business decisions based on impressing them rather than serving my clients and growing sustainably. There is a difference between building something excellent and building something that looks impressive to people who don't understand your market. The other unexpected challenge was managing their new expectations. Once they understood that my business was successful, they assumed that meant I had unlimited flexibility and resources. They expected me to be available for family events during my busiest business hours. They suggested I could easily relocate or change my business model if family circumstances required it. I had to educate them about the realities of running a service-based business. My time was scheduled months in advance with client commitments. My revenue depended on consistent service delivery. My staff and clients counted on me being present and focused. Success didn't mean I could treat the business casually. These post-recognition challenges taught me that family dynamics around business ownership are complex and evolving. Initial skepticism can transform into overwhelming support, which creates different but equally challenging navigation requirements. The key is maintaining clear boundaries and continuing to make decisions based on what is best for your business and clients, regardless of whether family members are skeptical or enthusiastic about your work. Looking back on this entire experience, I realized that building Santos Wellness Studio while managing family skepticism taught me lessons that extend far beyond business development. It taught me about trusting my own judgment, about the difference between support and approval, about the importance of surrounding myself with people who understand what I'm trying to achieve. Most importantly, it taught me that other people's inability to see your potential doesn't limit what you can actually accomplish. Their skepticism says more about their perspective than about your capabilities. Today, when potential clients tell me their families don't understand why they're investing in wellness coaching, I share my story. Not to criticize their families, but to help them understand that building something meaningful often requires you to trust your instincts over other people's comfort with conventional approaches. I tell them that the people who love us most sometimes have the hardest time seeing us differently than they've always seen us. That is human nature, not a reflection of our potential for growth and success. I also tell them that proving family members wrong isn't the goal. Proving yourself right is. The satisfaction comes not from their eventual acknowledgement, although that is nice, but from knowing you trusted yourself enough to pursue something meaningful despite their initial skepticism. The business I built exceeded my own expectations, not just theirs. Santos Wellness Studio now serves hundreds of clients, employs dozens of people, and generates revenue I couldn't have imagined when I was training Patricia in the park for $20 an hour. But the most valuable outcome isn't the financial success or professional recognition. It is the knowledge that I can trust my judgment, that I can build something significant from nothing, that I can persist through skepticism and doubt to achieve something meaningful. That confidence extends to every area of my life now. When I'm considering new business opportunities, personal relationships, or major life decisions, I have evidence that my instincts are reliable and my capabilities are greater than other people might initially recognize. That is the real gift of building something successful while managing family skepticism. You learn that you don't need external validation to pursue your dreams, but you also learn that eventually results speak louder than opinions. Your family's initial reaction to your unconventional path doesn't predict your ultimate success. Their inability to see your vision doesn't mean the vision isn't valid. Their comfort with traditional approaches doesn't mean traditional approaches are your only options. What matters is whether you can identify real market needs, develop valuable solutions, persist through challenges, and maintain focus on serving your clients excellently. If you can do those things consistently, success becomes inevitable regardless of who believes in you initially. So if you're reading this while feeling like the family disappointment, while being told to get a real job, while having your dreams dismissed as hobbies or phases, remember this: every successful entrepreneur has faced skepticism from people who couldn't see what they were building. The difference between those who succeed and those who don't isn't the absence of skepticism. It is the ability to persist through skepticism while building something undeniably valuable. Your family's recognition will come eventually, but it shouldn't be your primary motivation. Build something excellent for your own satisfaction and for the people you serve. Let the results speak for themselves. Trust your instincts over their comfort zones. Most importantly, remember that their current inability to see your potential doesn't limit what you can actually achieve. You have the power to prove them wrong by proving yourself right. One client, one sale, one success at a time. The journey from family disappointment to business success isn't just about changing their perception of you. It is about discovering what you're truly capable of when you trust yourself completely and refuse to accept other people's limitations as your own. Thank you for listening. Truly, if this story touched you, I'd love for you to like, subscribe, and remember that your dreams are valid even when the people closest to you can't see them yet.